Okay, we're going to take a look at the 1977 Avalon Hill game, Victory in the Pacific, and it was designed by Richard Hamblin. Now, I've been gaming since about 1969, and I didn't pay much attention to this game when it came out. It's actually a sequel game to the game War at Sea, which also I didn't pay much attention to. And I only recently picked this up at WBC this year. And in a nutshell, I'm very impressed with the game. Now, I'm still learning it, but we're just going to look at the pieces, give you a little bit of the history of the game, and see if we can get you interested in it. The game is out of print, which is a darn shame. I think it should be reprinted. War at Sea was reprinted by L2 Designs, and I've ordered it, so I'm looking forward to that. So let's take a look at the pieces and how this game generally works. Okay, one of the things that turned me off a little bit from the game when I first saw it back in the 70s was the map. Now, it's a perfectly functional map. No question. It works. There's no ambiguities that I can see. It's just that it's not, you know, really pretty, you might say. You know, Australia in red and Japan in red. The colors are a little garish. I kind of wish it looked a little bit more like a geographical, just a nicer looking map. But don't let that turn you off from the game itself. It's a fine game. Now, the counters themselves, I'm a sucker for naval games. And the counters are really nice. They're large. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. The large counters, I guess they're what, maybe 3/4 of an inch. Individual ships, capital ships are named. So you've got battleships, battle cruisers, heavy carriers, light carriers. So you don't have destroyers and things like that. This is mainly the capital ship level. And of course you've got these damage and sunk markers. That's my little nitpick. These eyes are getting kind of old now, so these the damage counters are rather small. They're much smaller than the ship counters, which they're supposed to be. But I'm thinking of actually doing a second set of these, making them a bit larger. So the counters are quite functional. Of course, you get dice, and you get these control markers to indicate bases and who controls what. The rules are not very long. It's not a complicated game. So we're talking here the old style Avalon Hill rules folder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 pages of rules and an illustration of play. Now the rules are very fine font, so there's a lot of rules in 6 or 7 pages. I find them a little difficult to read. Like I said, these old eyes are getting old, so someone on Board Game Geek has done a second edition rules. It's formatted a little bit nicer, and that works out to about, what, 20 pages or so. But the formatting is superior in the second edition, so if you do get the game, you might want to download those. I just find them easier to read. You get these setup cards. There's the Allied Order of Appearance, and of course the Japanese Order of Appearance. The cards are quite large. For a simple game, this game takes a lot of room. It's filling my table here by the time you get these cards out. It does take a lot of room even for a simple game. The Allied Order of Appearance, well, of course, you'd put the counters on here for the setup, and, you know, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, nothing new there. That's the old Avalon Hill style of bringing new pieces onto the board, and I kind of like it. The Allied Order of Appearance, or starting forces actually, is on the back of the manual. So what I did was just obviously make a Xerox copy, put it in plastic, just easier to set up. Now, I won't go through an entire game, of course, but what I'll do is I'll set up the counters and give you a little overview on how the game works and why I like it. Okay, the game begins with each side placing their forces on the starting forces card, and this will give us an opportunity to see the counters a little bit closer. You can see they're quite well done. There's the Lexington, for example. The first number is the ship's gunnery factor, the second factor is its armor value, and the third value is its speed value. On the upper right, for carriers, that's their aircraft capacity. And for example, you can see there's a cruiser Astoria here as a 117, Portland 117. Various colors. These kind of, I guess, light green units are the British forces. And these other greenish counters represent, well, the Dutch forces. There you have the De Ruyter, and there you have the Australian forces. You also have land-based air counters. There you have the 7th Air Force. That's its combat value, the number of dice it would throw in a battle, and 4 is the number of hits it can take before it's destroyed. And you can see, well, these are the units that start on the map, and I'll be putting them on the map and we'll take a look at them. And the Japanese forces are over here. Quite a host of counters, actually. You can see there's lots of carriers. They have lots of land-based air. They have their I-boat counter. And there you've got the Yokosuka Marines. So the game begins with the placement of the counters on the order of appearance charts. Then the Japanese player will designate the Pearl Harbor raid forces. Now, any game on the Pacific War has to take into account the Pearl Harbor raid, and I don't think I've seen one that hasn't. And this one takes it into account too, and does it very well. Turn 1 of this game is quite different than the other turns. So in turn 1, the Japanese player will assign certain forces to the Pearl Harbor raid, and on turn 1 he'll move those forces to the Hawaiian Islands sea zone and do a free attack on the Allied shipping in the harbor, simulating the raid, and we'll get to that in a minute. So let's put the counters on the board and see what it looks like. Okay, there you have the general setup for, let's say, turn 1. Now, for the purposes of this video, this is not going to be the optimum setup or the best move or anything like that. I just want to show you generally how the game works. So what I've done is taken a bunch of carriers and moved them over to the Hawaiian Islands there, and you can see the rest of the Japanese Navy in the Yokosuka Navy Yard. So we're going to zoom in now, and I'll try to explain the game a little bit, and we'll see how it works. Now you can see the game is divided up into sea areas, and you can see Japanese and American flags in the various areas. Now, for the purposes of victory, all that matters are those control markers, US ones and the Japanese ones. That's all that matters, is controlling these sea areas. So you get no points for sinking ships. Now, a lot of games, you might get, let's say, 1 point for sinking a destroyer, or 2 points for a cruiser, and maybe 5 points for a battleship, and maybe 10 for a carrier. This game, you get no points for sinking ships. Sinking ships is only a means to an end, and that's one of the reasons I really like this game. It's really strategic in nature. Oh, you'll fight battles all right, and you will sink ships, but they're only a means to an end. All you care about is controlling these sea areas. That's what this game is all about. It's grand strategy. Now, if you're looking for a game that simulates tactical battles like Coral Sea or Midway, this is not the game for you. This is grand strategy, and that's why I think it's a great game. So let's look at some of the areas closer. Okay, you'll remember that on turn 1 the Japanese get to do the historic Pearl Harbor raid, and I've just taken a bunch of the Japanese ships here, and these are the ones that are going to be on the raid. Now, I should point out, when a ship is in raiding status, they're actually flipped to the white side. White side indicates they're raiding, and the other side indicates that they're patrolling for points. We'll get to that later. So these are the ships I've selected to be on the Pearl Harbor raid. And you can see the U.S. fleet here based at Pearl Harbor. Now, these vessels here are the fleets: Lexington, Enterprise, these other carriers, Saratoga. Their location was unknown to the Japanese. And this is one thing I like about the opening of this game. It's really cool. The Japanese get to do their historic attack on Pearl Harbor. They get to do 2 waves of attacks, and they're going to want to really mess up the U.S. Pacific fleet here. A lot of people historians and stuff say, well, why didn't the Japanese stick around and do another raid and really sort of finish off the fleet? Well, the Japanese had other things on their mind too. For one thing, they were a long way from home, and they didn't know the location of these American carriers. So what Richard has done in this game, I think it's kind of cool. The Japanese can stick around to do another raid, but the Americans will roll a die, and depending on what they get, these forces will come in on the board, and we don't know where they're going to come in. They might come in here on the Hawaiian Islands, or they might come in here on the Central Pacific behind the Japanese. So the Japanese do not know when or if these forces are coming in, and I think that's really cool. So they have a big decision. They stick around and hit, you know, the American Pacific Fleet again, or just do that one hit and get the hell out. So I think it's got a real cool opening, and kind of simulates the way the situation was. As I mentioned, the sea areas are all that matters for control. So you can see where the Japanese flags are. They already control the area. The Marshall Islands here would gain the Japanese 1 victory point, POC point. The Allies would also get 1 POC point. So all that matters are changing these areas. If the American player captures the Marshalls, you flip the counter, and that indicates that he will get the POC point instead of the Japanese. So sinking ships, battles, are all just a means to an end. Controlling these seas is the game. And believe me, it makes for a very interesting situation. Well, how does combat work on turn 1? Well, turn 1 is a little different than other turns, because turn 1 is an air raid. And with an air raid, only the carrier units do the actual attack. So you take these carriers, all the ones with the little numbers in the upper right, and those are the ones that would be hitting Pearl Harbor. Of course, that represents the aircraft on the carriers. So these cruisers and stuff don't take part in the actual air raid. So here we have 3, 4, 7 carriers attacking the U.S. Pacific Fleet here at Pearl Harbor, anchored in the harbor. And combat works by you assign one vessel to attack another vessel. And we'll do it kind of just this way for now to show you how combat works. So it takes a little bit of space here. These will be excess ships. Alright, so in this combat, the Akagi's aircraft, would roll 4 dice against the battleship Tennessee. And you'd roll 4 dice, and you're hoping to get 6s. In this case, no 6s. First wave goes in, nothing happened. Hiryu is attacking Nevada. She's rolling 3 dice. She gets a 6. Now, for every 6 you get, you roll the die again, and that shows you how many hits are inflicted. In this case, 5 hits against Nevada. She'd mark that with a 5 marker. So there we have Nevada marked with a 5 marker. Now ordinarily in a sea combat that would sink the vessel. Why? Because the damaged value is in excess of the Nevada's armor value. But when the ship is in port, its defense is doubled. So that's really like an 8. So we'll go on to the next combat, and then we'll get back. And remember, it's a two-wave combat in this one. The Akaga is rolling 4 dice against the Oklahoma. No 6s. The Ruyo is rolling 2 dice against the Pennsylvania. No 6s. The Saryu is rolling 3 dice against the West Virginia. No 6s. Hey, we got a really bad attack here. And, whoops, the Zuikaku. Okay, Zuikaku will attack the California. 4 dice. There's 1 hit. So we roll a die again, and we get 3 hits. We have to mark California with a 3 damage counter. Alright, and the Shikaku will roll 4 dice against the Maryland. And she gets a 6. Roll again, and she inflicts 3 on the Maryland. Okay, now that's all round 1 stuff. Now, the air raid is 2 rounds, and the defending ships do not get to fire back. So in goes the second wave. The Akagi again goes in against the Tennessee. Rolling 4 dice, she's got a 6. She rolls again, rolling 1, so that means just a single hit on the Tennessee. The Hiryu goes in. She has a chance to sink the Nevada now. She rolls 3 dice. She does not get a 6. 5 actually disables the vessel, but we're going to ignore that. There's a rule explaining why you ignore that for now, but we'll go to the next attack, the Kaga, and no 6s. Now I won't complete the combat, but you get the idea how combat works. Now let's pretend for the sake of argument the Nevada had more hits on it, and it had exceeded the 8 value. Then the Nevada would be considered sunk and removed from play. Now in the Pearl Harbor attack, if you get over the armor value, but not enough to sink it, the ship sinks in the harbor and can later be raised and used again in the game. So that's generally how an air raid works. Note also, these planes on the ground could have been attacked. And I hope I've done that right, but that's as far as I can understand how air raids work. Now with the air raid over, the ships would return to their stacking status there. We'd keep the ships here back on Pearl Harbor, and you proceed to the next phase. So that's how the attack works. Now you're also supposed to do an attack over here in Indonesia, because the Japanese did strike there too. Now I haven't moved any forces there, but if I did, they'd have an attack here against the Repulse and the Prince of Wales and the 5th Air Force. What I'm trying to show is just the Pearl Harbor attack and sort of how combat works, at least in air raid, how it works. Okay, let's say for the sake of argument we had a situation where 2 battleships, the Tennessee and the Maryland, ended up in the same square as the Ice and the Haruna, 2 other battleships. What each player would decide first is whether they want a day or night action. If both players agree to have a day action, then you fight out the action as a day action. If both agree to have a night action, then you have a night action. If one player wants a day action and the other one wants a night action, you roll for it, and there are appropriate modifiers to cause or decide whether it is a day or night action. And if each player happens to roll a tie, then you're going to have a day action and a night action. Now day actions in sea areas are actually only fought between carriers. Only carrier aircraft fight in a day action. It's considered to be taking place over a wider space of ocean. I mean, these ocean areas are gigantic. So if you fight a day action, it's aircraft only. If you fight a night action, you go to surface combat. So in this case, let's pretend it was a surface combat situation. Haruna versus Maryland, and the Ice versus the Tennessee. Combat is simultaneous, so it doesn't matter who rolls first. So Haruna would roll 4 dice against Maryland. She rolled 5. Now this time we put a disabled marker on her. This means the ship's going to have to return to port. And the Ice rolls 4 dice against the Tennessee. She rolls also a 5, which also disables the vessel. Okay, since combat is simultaneous, the Maryland gets to fire back at the Haruna. She rolls a 6 and a 5, so disables and hits. So we roll, see how many hits. She rolls 1 hit. So we disabled Haruna and we inflict 1 hit on her. Okay, and the Tennessee, 4 dice, fires on the Ice, getting a 6 and a 5, disabling her, and hits. How many hits? 4 hits, which is equal to her defense value. Now to sink a vessel, you have to actually exceed her defense value. Now, and that's also disabled, isn't it? Okay. Now, to tell you the truth, I forgot the rule about disabled ships, but I believe disabled ships have to retreat. So both sides have kind of wiped each other out, and they have to return to port, and that would end that combat. These disabled markers would later be removed as the ships are repaired. Also, the damage inflicted on these ships can be repaired in port, and each port has a repair value which changes in the game. The Yokosuka Navy Yard, I think, can repair 6 points of damage per turn, and Pearl Harbor can repair a variable amount depending on the turn of the game. Now, there's a lot more to this game than I can possibly show in this video. I mean, I never even got into the marine units which can be used to land on these islands and take possession. I didn't really get into land-based air, which is very important. There's some land-based air units here. They can attack ships. It's a more complicated game than meets the eye looking at the map. Now, I will mention these flowcharts that somebody on Board Game Geek has made. These are well done. They're available on the Gameaholics.com site. Someone's gone to a lot of work to make these nice flowcharts to help understand the game. And if you follow this sequence, you really can't go wrong. There's quite a lot to this game. Now, this video is not all that I wanted it to be. Like I said, I'm still learning the game, so I don't want to come across as an expert on it. I certainly am not. I just like the game. I think it's got great potential. I'm looking forward to playing it in the near future. And I have ordered War at Sea, which is the predecessor to this game. So I'm looking forward to playing that game too. So I hope this kind of gives you just an overview of the game. If you do get a chance to get it on eBay or something, or for a good price, I highly recommend you get it. And I doubt if Hasbro is watching any of our videos here on Board Game Geek and YouTube and stuff, but if they are, get this thing back in print. This is a heck of a good game. Thanks for watching.